Here I'm going to show the visualization I created to analyze the data we collected in our two-factor and phishing survey. I created this app using the Shiny package in R. So basically our survey asked a bunch of really straightforward questions, a lot of which had yes or no responses. And this first graph breaks down those responses. And a quick note, please feel free to pause the video at any point to further examine a graph. So for the question here, do you know what a phishing attack is? The answers were yes and no. And we see that approximately 2/3 of our respondents do know what a phishing attack is. Whereas for the question, do you know what two-factor authentication is? We see that the vast majority do know what two-factor authentication is. And for the question, have you ever been the victim of a cyber attack? We see that the vast majority have not, whereas around 20% have. Okay, moving on to our second visualization, it gets a little bit more complex. So here I created a variable that I plot on the x-axis. That's the percent of phishing questions the respondents answered correctly. And so we basically had four questions related to phishing attacks that could be correct or incorrect. And so here, this category 0.25 is those that only answered one of these four questions correctly. 0.5 are those who answered half or two of these questions correctly, and so on. And here on the y-axis, we have this coded question variable that had a range from 1 to 10, 1 being mild responses, 10 being extreme. So for the first question of how important is cybersecurity to you, we see that those who answered one of the four questions correctly, they cared a good amount about cybersecurity, and then it slowly increases with a big jump here for those that answered all of the phishing questions correctly. And moving on, we have how often do you think about cybersecurity? So you can see a steady increase through each of these response levels until it tapers off here. And so we see that those who answered 3 and 4 questions correctly care roughly the same amount. And so finally, for the question, how frightened are you of being the victim of a cyber attack? We can see that there's a very consistent relationship, and that respondents who know more about phishing attacks here tend to be much more frightened of being a victim of one. So that's it for the Shiny app display. If you would like to examine the R script for these graphs or for our other graph, please just see our GitHub below. Thanks.